right, Jimmy. How you doing, buddy?
Good. What's going on?
Hold on. I'm
Well,
doing my
I see a
old.
I see a white light. Is it time for me to go home?
I see a white light, and here we are,
Wow.
buddy.
I thought I was at the pearly gates for a second. Wow.
Good to see you, bro. So again, we're going ghetto tonight because the studio. We all know that Abe left, and we have a new producer, but she had a little bit of difficulty. So we're back in ghetto land, and Monty is producing as well as co-hosting, my brother.
At the board, Michael Monty. So this is unbelievable. So how you doing? How's your friendship with the Rascals, Mike?
Oh my God! You know what? It can't get worse than that. That's for damn sure, man.
I didn't mean it like that. You're mean. Anyway, I regret.
1 second. My guest is worried. All God. Good. I see you.
I said lunch, not launch.
No. Well, anyway, back to the show. So we've got two really great shows tonight, right? We've got The Good Doctor, Dillon Hines, in a tribute to Sid. And we got a lot to talk about, Jimmy. There's a lot to talk about. We want to do a nice tribute to Sid. So before we start everything, Jimmy, we lost Sid last week. What did Sid mean to you, bro?
Sid is like one of those legit monsters. You know, he felt it. His aura was it. He was just. I just took him very seriously. I found him very scary. His character was amazing, and he played it to a perfect 10. He was a monster. He looked the part. It's funny. He's almost Bill Buckner when you think of his promos because he's remembered for that one brain fart that time. But he was a pretty good promo guy. I enjoyed his promos. I felt like he was going to break your spinal cord in half. He was very convincing in a time where it was getting cartoony, and he fit better than a lot of failures, obviously. Sid was the main eventer wherever he went. When we met Sid, I'm sure you remember when we met him at the big event we did several years back, I was nervous as fuck. He had an aura to him. Like, he was nice to us. He was friendly, he was cordial, but he still had this aura. And I was like, oh, my God, he's scary. Mike, take me home. Right,
dude, definitely one of the all-time greats, man. Yeah. Definitely one of the all-time greats.
No doubt.
When we saw him, it was pretty cool. I actually put the picture on our when I put the picture on our social media page. It was very cool, man. It was very cool.
Bro, was that the freezing? Was that?
Let's hit some news items too. We got.
Was that the freezing cold day? Because I'm dressed like I'm ready to go skiing. Was that the time we were outside and like, oh my God, it's freezing. What are we doing here?
Actually, Jimmy, that was the time where, Jimmy and I, big wrestling fans, we go to the big event and Jimmy's like, yeah, I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm not doing this at all.
Yeah.
And I'm like, come on, bro. We had a great time though. Listen, we got a lot on the docket, Jimmy, and you got to weigh in. There's a lot going on.
Do I have to?
Bear with me, right, as I am producing, and so I will speak a little bit slower. And again, I want to invite everybody. We have our guest, the Good Doctor, Dillon Hines, one of the top promoters. He'll be joining us in a minute. But the first few things, Jimmy, 38-year-old Tasha Smith. You know Tasha? She gunned down her husband because he stopped eating her vagina every night.
That's not what it says.
He knows this is her statement. He knows
it says he stopped eating her ass every night.
No, but this is vagina. I grabbed the wrong picture, of course.
Wait a minute. First, let's
before we went to bed.
Which point of entry was it?
It was the vagina. Before we went to bed, he ate my vagina every night. He knows I loved it, and then he stopped. Thoughts on that, buddy?
What sort of thoughts? You kill somebody because they won't go downtown? Take yourself downtown, you psychopath. That's not a real story, Mike. That can't be.
That is
not be a real story, Mikey.
That is a true story, buddy. That's a true story.
Oh, somebody's dead over this, and you want me to? Oh, want me to weigh in? Hey, Pharaoh, what do you think?
Let me ask you something. Not to digress, but what is more powerful, the cock or the tongue?
The what? What?
The cock or the tongue? Which one's more powerful?
Equally lethal if you know balance in life. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
I actually think there's more power into the tongue, bro.
Oh, boy. Don't you know that the mouth is the dirtiest part of your body? The good book says so. So reevaluate. Balance, my friend. Balance.
All right. Some important stuff, right? As you know, Monty and the Pharaoh have been feuding with Busted Open's own Bully Ray Dudley.
Bully Ray. Yeah.
So Bully Ray went on to Twitter. He has not such kind stuff to say about us. And just recently, when I'm posting here, Bully Ray, when he's on Busted Open Radio and he speaks in interviews, he has a few things in mind, Jimmy. He feels that if you did not wrestle, you have no right to use the lingo. You have no right to comment on the sport. And we're going to call it a sport because I think everybody watching feels that it's a sport. And I was listening to a show, Jimmy. I didn't think I had a chance to talk to you about it, but some guy had called and they were speaking about NXT. Who are the two guys? Good God, I can't remember the dude's name now. But the guy on the phone said he mentioned that to Bully Ray that he thought the guy was green. And Bully Ray stops the entire conversation. He goes, wait a minute. Don't ever use that word again. Don't ever use that word. You never took a bump. And just yesterday, AEW finished up, and there was a guy on Twitter, and he commented that Luchasaurus actually spoke in the ring for the first time because Arn Anderson's son is so bad at pro wrestling. Right, that Luchasaurus had to speak, and as you can see in here, Bully Ray took offense to it because, God forbid, someone that's not into pro wrestling has something to say. What are your thoughts about all this, man?
Well, I mean, to use a New York comparative, it's the Boomer Esiason thing. The quarterback for the Bengals and then for the Jets up in New York, where he does talk radio in New York for how long now, Mike? Decades, right? And Boomer's good at what he does. Of course he is. He wouldn't be on the air that long. But Boomer does that all the time. If you never were in the locker room, in an NFL locker room, you don't know. Okay, first of all, there's nothing but 100% logic if you take that route where because it's true. I've never been an NFL player in an NFL locker room. No, I wouldn't know or be familiar with what that's like. But are you going to tell me that, and I'll use our business, that the greats like a Gordon Soley who never got in the ring wasn't worthy of knowing the talk, talking the talk, walking the walk, and having the knowledge that he did in wrestling? Look, and another thing is without the fans, and by the way, when wrestlers get paid and they do interviews, Mike, we've seen it 1,000 times, they use the language that the wrestlers use because they know the fans understand it when you say mark, or it was a work, or it was a shoot. All the wrestlers say this in the interviews they're paid to do for the fans to consume. And the fans all understand the language. So you can't have it both ways. You can't be upset with the fan base because they talk your talk. If anything, what's the old thing? Imitation is the best form of flattery. Fans are speaking your language because they love your sport, Bubba. What's wrong with you? Cut that crap out. And you know what? It's part of his shtick, Mike. We both know that. Bubba feeds into that. He's no dum-dum. Is this going to change the fact that the Dudley Boys, besides Demolition, are my favorite all-time tag team? Nope. I'm not swimming in that toilet. Don't be
so let me ask you that. At what point do you say, you know what, fuck the wrestling. This guy's just a total dick. By the way, Maria Davis, the first lady of wrestling, God bless you. Thank you for the little bits there so much. I mean, at what point are you giving up on Bully Ray? Because I personally, listen, dude, I got to be honest with you. I don't like the guy. I could care less. And I'm being 100% honest with you, Jimmy. Right. I'm an old man. I'm an old man at this point. But this guy legitimately thinks he's a tough guy, and he really is not. He's not. And you know what? Again, he's 260, 70 pounds. I'm 270 pounds. So hey, We're both the same age. The
Yeah,
guy is a privileged dick, and that's the fact. He, to me, has ruined his as a fan. I'm done. I'm done with him, Jimmy. I am flat out done.
Look, I can see why you would be. Look. I don't want to rehash all the history. Our first experience ever with paying for an athlete of known stature, we got completely pants dropped. It was like, wow, what a talk about having your fandom portion of you just ripped away in like what, an hour, Mike? Think about that. That's where it started for us. So yeah, so when somebody that okay, we once looked up to, I'll go this far. What we once looked up to on a much higher plane is knocked all the way down to just normalcy, because that's all it is to me at this point. Because you're right about a lot of the things you say. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, to me, You said that. At what point do I give up on Bully Ray? Here's the whole thing. Since the very first time we had a guest come in and not do the right thing as a human being towards us, I gave up giving in to anybody in this business, if you really know what I'm trying to say here. So, like, my fandom kind of got trampled right away. I still love it. You know I do. You know I love meeting a lot of the guys we watched growing up, et cetera, et cetera. But look, out short of Bully Ray saying something like, Adolf Hitler was a great guy, it's indifferent to me at this point. I have to get
Jimmy,
numb.
I personally have a problem when people think they're better than other people. And
Right.
this isn't a gimmick. That's the thing. Wrestling's about gimmicks, right? Everybody plays into it, that kind of bullshit.
So you think
this
that,
isn't a gimmick.
Mike,
he thinks he's better.
You really think that this is really him then, fully? Okay.
This is fully him, and he thinks
That's
he's
a whole
better.
other story. Yeah.
He thinks he's better. Just
I
like
got you.
LaGreca thinks he's better,
Right.
just like Tommy Dreamer thinks they're better.
Right.
There comes a point when it's like, listen, man.
I got you.
I wrote personally on Twitter. I'm like, so let me understand the rules. Okay.
Oh, that was great. I saw that. Yeah, go ahead.
You can't use the lingo. You can't critique.
Right.
You can't do anything except give your hard-earned money to support you.
Right.
I mean, there becomes a point, it's like, it's beyond the gimmick. It's beyond the gimmick.
You know what?
It's irking me, dude. It's irking me to a level that I cannot take.
I think it's, you know what, though? I was just thinking to myself, I used to watch ECW in places like high schools, Mike, okay? So that's back in the day when Bubba's not even near a WWE paycheck yet. You know what I'm saying? And I'm paying I think I had like a very modest job at the time, and I paid my hard-earned money to see him a couple of times in simple high schools and stuff like that with Paul Heyman's company. I wonder if he would have been that way towards fans back then. Maybe he was. Maybe he was always rough with people. I'm kind of fascinated by that now.
Let me ask you a question. If it isn't for Vince McMahon and it isn't for Paulie, right? Where's Bubba today? Like, for example, Perch on the Top Rope. And if anyone doesn't know what Perch on the Top Rope is, it was literally, we had him on the show, and I use his gimmick name, right? Because it's important. This is a guy with no backing. Backing. The third. And became the #1 audio in the United States for a very long time.
Right.
And I was happy that he agreed with what I had to say. To me, that's more impressive than someone carrying, he doesn't have Busted Open behind him. He doesn't have Sirius Radio behind him.
Correct.
And he does a fantastic job. And I mean, I'm more impressed by guys like that, man. Do you understand what I'm saying? When I see guys that having success, and you don't see this guy pounding on his chest. I mean, I don't know, dude.
I got you.
The whole Bully Ray thing has got under my skin. Like, look, you said it before, right? LaGreca's from New York, right?
Yeah.
I think personally, whether people, I think you and I have done a good job, and thanks to the family who supported us all this time, right? We've become a pretty known entity in the wrestling field. Do you think LaGreca would give us a rub, right? Do you think, do you think Bully Ray would give us a rub?
No. And it parallels my story of going to pay for them to go see them in high schools to wrestle. I believed in them when they were trying to get into the business, and I think that was my point weeks back is that they've done nothing to support their local boys. We're New Yorkers. We know exactly who you guys are, okay? I mean, or at least we know the environment you come from. I'm sure we could relate on a lot of different levels, but did you ever help us? Oh, hell no. I take that as a badge of honor, to be very honest. I mean, look, there's in every clusterfuck, there's something good to come out of it, and that's how I see it. It's a badge of honor. People who don't want to give you respect either are, you know, weary of you for one good reason or another, and it's usually a good reason. So we've done well, Mike. We've done it.
Yeah, but my biggest problem, Jimmy, he doesn't respect anyone's opinion because he doesn't think if they bump. Look, dude, Booker T, the picture was showing right now. Booker T with Roxanne Perez, right? He's invested in Roxanne Perez, right? He trained her.
Yes,
look, what Bully Ray said, he's in fear for Roxanne Perez because he feels if she goes to the main roster, she's maybe get lost in the sauce. And Booker T took Bully Ray to task, right? On this whole situation.
Right.
And the two had a connection the other day, and I was listening in, and he was asking Booker T for an apology. And you can tell Booker T really didn't want to apologize to him, but he did. Because Booker T, on the other hand, seems like a good guy and understands what it's like to come from the bottom up. You know what I'm saying? I don't ever believe that Bully Ray aid came from the bottom up. That's my point. That's why I think he has no respect for anyone.
You don't feel, what do you mean by you don't feel Bully Ray came from the bottom up? Because I feel he did. ECW was not a high paying, safe
All right. What I mean by that, Jimmy, is the guy, I think he went to Harbor Fields, didn't he?
Oh, wow. You're going back to the map itself and who's what and where on
Thank you.
Our home.
That's where I'm going, right? And if anyone doesn't know, Jimmy and I went to a place called John Glenn High School.
Right.
Our enemies were Harbor Field, where Bully Ray came from. Actually, Devon came from our high school, too. So the point of the matter is, what I'm trying to say to you is I don't believe that Bully Ray started from the bottom up, where Booker T grew up in the streets and went to jail and learned how to get respect.
There's no doubt about that. That I agree with 1,000%. I mean, if Bubba's from Harbor Fields, yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that tough people don't come from Harbor Fields. Of course they do. But Harbor Fields was not exactly, can I be fair, Mike? Like, you know, Brentwood, you do not want to go into Brentwood and start a fight. You're going to have yourself a real problem. You know,
I'm gonna add Dillon Hines in with us, Jimmy.
Yes, sir.
Dillon, welcome to Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast, brother. Let's get you set up. Beautiful. How are you, sir? So, Dillon, before you joined us, we were just speaking about Bully Ray complaining about fans or people that really aren't in the industry using the lingo, commenting on the wrestling. Your father's a very famous Hall of Famer. How do you feel about regular guys like me and Jimmy, you know, critiquing wrestlers and fans critiquing wrestlers, and maybe at some points using some of the lingo involved in wrestling? Do you think that's insulting to the wrestler?
It depends, I guess. Like, you know, I don't know. Y'all have a podcast. It's a different world nowadays. The old school view would have been, though, that y'all shouldn't be doing that. But nowadays, you know, it's a different world we're living in.
Well, you're a pretty popular agent, right? You work with these guys all the time. You speak to them all the time. As an agent, do you feel comfortable speaking that kind of lingo to the wrestlers you're representing, or how does that work?
I couldn't hear anything you said because I don't know what's going on with the StreamYard, but it keeps cutting in and out for whatever reason.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So you represent a lot of wrestlers out there, correct?
Correct.
Do you feel comfortable speaking to those wrestlers in a way as if you were a wrestler, or at least using their lingo and that way, or is there a certain respect that you give?
So the question was, do I feel comfortable using their lingo?
Yeah.
I've been around it forever, so it's different. I guess it's different for me to someone else, I guess. Just because, you know, I was born into this. So it's like if somebody's born here but their parents are from a different country and their parents speak, you know, that language of that different country, then, you know, I guess it's different in that regard. That's what my opinion of that is.
So I kind of get where you're coming with this, but all right, let me ask you this. How does your father feel about non-wrestlers talking about the business or feeling like they're representing the business in a certain way.
He and I've never really had that conversation, so I couldn't say how he feels.
Okay.
I know how his opinion used to. I know how his opinion used to be, and it would have been pre-podcast time. So we went down to WrestleMania in Dallas, not this past time, but the time before, right? We watched an ROH show. We watched a WrestleCon Super Show. We watched like 3 different wrestling events, right? And his views on wrestling completely changed that weekend when he was able to see how evolved the wrestling business has been. Maybe that's what a guy like Bully Ray or whoever, maybe they need to go and realize that the wrestling business has evolved in some forms of fashions compared to how it was in ECW in the 1990s or WWE in the mid-2000s,
But and to Jimmy's point, when we were speaking though, Dillon, right? Do you watch football, basketball, hockey, baseball, anything like that?
I don't watch sports, but I agree with you. Pro wrestling is a sport. It's the king of sports, so
So
what it's always been
again,
called, the king of sports.
I think everybody has a right to their opinion, whether someone sucks, whether right. We're all paying our hard-earned money. I mean, there comes a point where it almost becomes insulting. I'm not going to beat this dead horse. My point is, I don't understand why a wrestler thinks he's better than. You know what I mean? I just don't get that. I don't get that.
Well, I'll say this. It's funny he does the Bully Ray character, because, I'll go on record saying he's always been kind of an asshole to everybody. I know he told my father back at an event about a year and a half ago. He told my father, he said, I don't do no brother pricing or nothing, because my dad and I book shows and stuff. He said, I don't do no brother pricing or nothing. He said, because none of that. He said, I don't consider myself one of the boys. So that's his opinion. He don't care for nobody. So that's what you get when you go into his territory.
So, Mike, getting back to what we talked about earlier, I was speculating, going back to the days when I saw him in high schools and stuff. I guess maybe this really has always been Bully Ray. I don't know. Sounds like it a little bit.
Yeah.
Again, I understand there's a certain level. I just don't understand. You got a fan calling your show and you're going to trash him because he used the word green. Come on, man. I mean, give it a break already. Let's just stop. Let's again. I'm assuming most people probably whatever, man. It doesn't matter. Let's move on.
Well, Dillon, where do you draw the line for respect from the fans? After all, the fans are the ones who've put the money in the pockets of everybody in the business chain. I mean, where is the line for the fan, Dillon? Is there a line that the fan is not supposed to cross? I mean, I would like to think most of us know the obvious lines you're not supposed to step over. But the right to have a podcast,
like if you're at a wrestling show, you're not supposed to hop up in the ring and
that's a bad idea. That's definitely a bad idea. We've seen what can happen with that. But I mean, where does the fan draw doesn't a fan have a right to have a podcast? After all, a lot of these wrestlers come on these podcasts that are made by fans. They're paid. I mean, we're a good thing. I mean,
I'll say this, as long as they're respectful, because we all know that guy. I can't even remember his name. I think he was out of the Boston area or whatever.
Oh God!
For back in April, I ain't gonna get started on him, but I can't remember his name though.
All right.
Yeah. But
fair enough.
As long as they're respectful to the talents,
Yeah.
Then they should be on the podcast.
Let's move on, right? So a couple of weeks ago, we had super agent Eric Sims on the show. Eric was down at the gathering and he had some issues with Big Vito. Jimmy, you shared that you met Big Vito in the gathering. You thought he was a great guy, right?
Yeah.
I don't know Big Vito. I do know Eric Sims. I wasn't at the gathering. He's just telling the story, right? I mean, that's what we're doing here. We're interviewing, you're telling your side of the story, right?
Correct.
So some videos got pretty popular out there about Big Vito, and Big Vito felt that his brand was being destroyed due to this Eric Sims interview. I didn't reveal this to you, though, Jimmy. Today, Big Vito called me. We had about an hour-long conversation. A few things I did not know about the man. Number one, he served for this country. So thank you, Vito, for protecting our great country, and thank you for putting your life on the line. He shared with me, you know, his wife's medical issues, and he tried to actually, you know, share the situation that went on with Eric. And, you know, I had shared with him that Eric, before the gathering, asked me if he thought that he should bring Vito in. And I said, I don't think you guys really get along, Eric. I don't think it's a good idea. I think you need to kind of move on. And but he brought him, and we all know the problems that happen, so we're not just going to keep talking about that issue.
I've spoken to both people, both Eric and Vito. How I see it as someone who's inside the business, you know, there was a better way that Eric could have conducted himself. Like, first off, you never pay somebody in front of a gigantic group of people. You just don't ever do that stuff. You walk up to
now,
them.
is that a vendor rule? Like, what is?
That's a wrestling rule. That's something that Eric should know. It's even old school, you know.
Eric, okay. Yeah, I'm very interested in the.
If I walked up and, you know, it's a sign of disrespect. The thing about Vito not wanting to eat with them, I asked him about that. He didn't want to eat before the match. Eric wanted to leave.
He wrestled that night.
So I agree with him on that. Like, if you were to go play football, for example, right? Y'all talked about sports earlier, right? If y'all gonna go play a sport, you don't want to be eating beforehand, you know, and get sick in the ring or whatever, you know. And then, like, so he said he was just gonna eat afterwards, you know, after the match and everything, which I can understand that. Eric, though, like yesterday, I called Eric and I said, Eric, I said, that wasn't right. I said, for you to go and say something about Vito's family member, because that's what he did, posted that thing about murder at a steakhouse or whatever. I can't really remember what the guy's name was or anything. I said, Eric, that'd be equal to him posting something about the Holocaust or something. I said, there's lows, and you don't go that low. You don't talk about somebody's dead family members. You know?
So, okay. I understand what you're saying there. And, you know, Vito explained himself to me too. Again, I'm not the judge, jury, and executioner, right? And I told that to Vito. It's like, you know, Eric's a friend. Eric was telling him his story. This is a wrestling show. We do know that there's a lot of drama in wrestling, Dillon. And if anyone knows about drama, let's be fair, you might be the king of the drama.
I'm the king of it.
No.
Yeah. So right. So you know, let's all be fair here and not act like we're, you know, these little white doves going on, right? So
little white doves.
Yeah, right. So, you know,
more like a bat. What are you talking about?
I mean, listen. On social media, if I don't see Dillon in a fight with someone during the week, I think maybe the world has ended at some point.
Or I might be dead.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you're dead. Did Dillon die? I haven't seen a post.
Michael, I think you'd call me up and be like, "Hey, man, you still alive?"
Yeah, I did. I'm like, whoa, what's up here? So, let me ask you this. So, one of the bones of contention was that Vito didn't sign all the pictures or whatever, and
he signed
Eric
all of them.
left.
He signed 300 photos. I will say
right.
that.
But I supposedly there were extra ones. But here's the thing I have a problem with, and I even said this to Vito. And you're an agent. I'm not. So you're going to tell me, and you're going to tell Jimmy. You bring a guy in, you do your deal, he signs his pictures, you drop him at the airport, you leave. His flight gets canceled. Is that your problem?
I would try to help out in the situation. But that's me. I'm a Southern boy, you know, so.
No, okay, I understand that's you, but is it the responsibility agent after they have finished the deal to, like, get the guy another hotel room, pay for the hotel room? I even said this to Vito. I wasn't so sure that I agreed with that. You know, Eric's contract or agreement was over.
I'll say this, Monty. The Vito was flown in, right?
Yeah.
It was flown in. When I fly a talent in, it is my responsibility to make sure that they are taken care of from point A to point B. I would have never left the state until I knew the talent was at the airport and had flown off and everything. Like, there was one time I had Boogeyman, like I think it was 2018, and there was an issue with his flight. I hung out with him all day, made sure everything was good, got him where he had food and all that stuff, and I made sure he was taken care of. If he would have needed a hotel room, I would have had no problem getting a hotel room for him. Just because,
And by the way, that's
the
what Vito
talent
said.
coming
He
in,
said
they don't know anybody in that area. Vito didn't know anybody in that area, right? So what's he supposed to do? Just it was kind of a shit situation, you know. It was, caught in the middle of rock and a hard place. They didn't know anybody in the Carolinas where he could have.
Now, here's the deal. So you told me what you would do, okay? And that's great.
And here's
right?
the other thing we got to remember. Eric booked the flight, so Eric had to be able to reset the flight and everything. Because it was on his card. It was on Eric's card. So if I went to book a flight, like, for example, a talent wants to have something changed with their flight, I have to do it myself because all the stuff's tied to my debit card. They don't have my debit card, where they can pull it up and look at the card number and make sure everything's reconfirmed correctly and all that stuff. So we can't act like
I get it, but my point, here's what I'm asking you, Dillon. I know what you would do, but as a standard rule, is it the responsibility of the agent to follow through to the end, in your opinion?
Yeah, I would say it should be, because I reach out to even after I have an event, I book like 30 guys for it. I always make sure they get home fine and everything. I always say, how was the flight home and everything go right,
Fair enough. And by the way, I want to say, Jimmy and Dillon, in the talk with Vito, really stand-up guy. Well-spoken, very intelligent, very respectful.
Right.
I didn't expect anything different. At no point did I think the guy was a dirtbag. You know what I'm saying?
Mike, if I can, look, we've been doing business with Eric for a long time. All right.
Sure.
He's a part of the business reasons why we have the library we have. He's helped contribute, and we've helped him, vice versa. What gets to me a little bit is that our job is to interview people. Everybody knows, and I'll say it again, because I don't go on Facebook and I don't make posts and I don't like to posture. I really don't. Mike, you know that I'm pretty private, and when the light goes on, I do my job, and then I go the fuck home. Okay? You know how I am. All right? Mm-hmm. It is our job as interviewers to allow both sides of whatever story is being told. Here's the most important part at home, folks, to be told. Our door is always open. If somebody has a controversial take that you don't agree with, please don't waste anybody's time by going on Facebook or doing this or doing that. Mike is very easy to find. I'm very easy to find, obviously, whether I want to be or not, right, Mike?
Sure.
And you get your chance to come on, okay? We should never be, and we have been canceled, and we have been held responsible for doing our job. Our job is to bring on people that people care about and are interested in because of their great bodies of work in this great sport. It's our job to bring these people on. If they have a controversial take, they're entitled to it. Don't penalize the show that is, otherwise that would mean that people like Morton Downey or Lenny Bruce or Howard Stern have no right to exist, and we do. If you want to lump us in with those, and I'm using them as examples because we have been lumped in with those. Fair, Mike? Fair.
Fair enough.
Right? We have an open door. You're always afforded the opportunity to tell your side of the story, and neither Mike or I are a judge, jury, and much less.
Listen, Jimmy. To be honest with you, Dillon has had problems with us in the past, right? We've interviewed people that Dillon wasn't happy about, but I think he understood where we were coming from, right, Dillon?
As Dillon explains, what an agent does and what he does, I can only come to one conclusion because, Dillon, we never discussed this, but years ago, I'm realizing more and more, as much as I love Abby, Abby's always working somebody. So I guess, Mike, was it that day Abby working us? Because you remember, it was like Dillon went back to where Dillon's from, and Pharaoh, do you have $50? So I ask you, Dillon, fairly, is Abby the ultimate worker? Was he working me that day? What's up with that?
He works everybody.
Ah, geez.
And he always
wait a minute.
Hold on, guys. Did he call y'all a champ? Did he use the word champ at all?
Did he use the word capital? He asked me for money. He said, "You have $50." He specified $50.
Did he use the word champ?
No. I don't think
Usually
so.
he calls people champ, and usually when he calls somebody champ, that means chump.
Oh, no, he didn't. Okay.
Really work at somebody.
No,
he says, "Hey,
called me.
champ, how you doing?"
He called me
Yeah.
Pharaoh. I'm so confused.
So let me. I want to stay on track here. So last night, or at least it was shown last night, Big Vito went on a podcast to discuss his problems with Eric Sims. I want to make it clear: Eric is a business partner and a friend of the show. He's a personal friend of mine. I like Eric a lot. Hey, Eric's got a good heart. All right, this is my opinion, and that's what it is. It's someone else's opinion. Don't believe it. Whatever. So he goes on this show, and his friend, that dude Duke, loves wrestling, right? The guy that doesn't know whether he's a black guy or a white guy, right? That guy. He don't know. He doesn't know. Some pictures he's white, some pictures he's black. I have no idea what that deal is.
God.
So I even told Vito on the phone today,
no,
that guy did exactly with you what you didn't want to, what Sims did with us. But here's the thing I wanted to ask you, Dillon. So here's an example. You're supporting Vito. I totally understand that. And like I said, Vito's a great guy.
Hold on. I do see both sides. I will say that.
I know. But here's my thing. How don't you have a problem with Vito going on that show, considering that guy, and, we didn't get a chance to talk about this. I'm going to bring it up. There was a argument between son and father. Somehow it got caught on air. Right? Shit happens. This guy exploited it and tried his best to make Dillon look like trash. This is factual, right, Dillon? He went out of his way to try to embarrass you and your father, right? How do you not have a problem?
Can I ask y'all a question?
Yeah.
Right. Can I ask y'all a question?
Sure.
Pharaoh, you're up first. Have you ever had an argument with a parent?
Have I ever had an argument with a parent? You want to talk about dirty? Parents. You want to talk about dirty, unwashed laundry? Of course I have. Why?
All right, Monty. You ever had an argument with your parent?
Absolutely.
Who has not had an argument with a parent?
But you're missing my point. My
thing was he recorded it. We thought the cameras were off, right? We didn't even know he was still on the phone. He recorded it. We looked at the phone finally, right? It's that this guy's still on here.
But that was my whole point to Vito, and that's my point to you. That guy's playing Mr. Nice Guy, right? Oh, Vito, Eric Sims is doing this to you. He's doing that to you. Meanwhile, you're using Vito. Not you. This guy's using Vito. And he tried to capitalize on an argument between to be fair, an older wrestler and his son, and tried to embarrass them.
I'll say this. My father had cancer, right? But he's in the gym every day nowadays. So for them to say, oh, he's weak or elderly or whatever, the guy's working out in the gym every day like he was back in the 80s. He still goes hard, lifting the weights and doing the treadmill and all that stuff. Trust me, if a physical altercation between my father and I, more than likely he'd be able to whoop my ass.
Well, I'll tell you, me and Jimmy had your father on the show. He's a respectful, good man, very kind. So, again, Jimmy and I interview people, and we ask the tough questions. So, Dillon, before we get into Sid, because that's the main thing, it's time to ask you some tough questions, okay? I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot. And this is respectful, right? I'm being respectful. And if you don't want to answer, you do not answer. Mm-hmm. All right? Again, we don't know anything. It's what we hear. Mm-hmm. Rumor has it that you got in a fight with Sonny Ono at an event. What's the story behind that?
So, Sonny Ono was the agent for Ultimo Dragon. Ultimo Dragon was booked in New Jersey during WrestleMania weekend. After the New Jersey match, he was to be taken to a hotel near the JFK airport because he wanted to fly Aeromexico, which you can't do that out of Philadelphia, I was told by Sonny. So we had to fly him in and out of JFK airport. JFK airport, So they had to do the show in New Jersey, and I had my driver take him. The issue between Sonny and I was solely because his percentage, which it was, I think, 10% or whatever, hadn't gotten back to the hotel yet which was because the driver couldn't just turn around and bring the money back to him and take Ultimo to the airport because it had been, out of the way and everything. It had been ridiculous. He took Ultimo to the airport. There was an issue at the hotel where they couldn't find the, which that's a horrible picture of me. They couldn't find the, reservation or whatever. I booked it to a third party and stuff. And during that situation, the Sonny was obviously drunk. He had 3 people come up behind me during this altercation, and I was jumped. And then Sonny acted like he's an ass, which I'm sure y'all could see for years. There's been issues with Sonny Ono, where you could see where people who run Game Changer Wrestling even had issues with him at one point, where they tried booking Muta during WrestleMania in Orlando, and they ended up losing out on Muta because Sonny Ono's carniness, I guess you'd call it.
So you're telling me they physically assaulted you then?
You're cutting in and out again.
You're telling me that they physically assaulted you?
He didn't physically assault me. He had 3 friends that physically assaulted me.
Okay, so let's go a little deeper. Again, respectful question, just asking, you can pass. The rumor from, again, wrestling and the bullshit that goes on. The rumor was the fight. You explain what the fight was over. What legs does the whole Lana, former WWE superstar, have in regards to you? I don't want to say, maybe not acting completely appropriate with her.
Complete bullshit.
Good enough.
If I was acting I'll say this, if I was acting inappropriate, why would her agent, still be doing operations with me?
Sure. And why would a bunch of people be doing business with you that are in the industry, right?
So what is
Makes sense to me.
Females that I'm working with, like Victoria and Melina and Deborah. And
So how does a rumor like this happen? How does a rumor come out like this? Like, how does this happen? Where does this grow legs?
I don't know. I'd love to know where some of these rumors come from. Including, I'm sure you got other rumors. What other rumors do you have?
Well, I got one more for you, if you're willing to answer it. Listen, I hope you're not getting mad at me. Jimmy, I don't want to get a bad call from Dillon screaming at me like I set him up, because I'm not setting him up.
Let me get this out, because I'm curious. Okay. Dillon, does this mean that Lana's just a fucking psychopath because she doesn't exactly have a smooth history with relations with anybody in any company? What's her deal? Is she just nuts?
No comment.
Okay. All right, so we got
that's the way to go, Dilly.
I think honestly, that she has some issues, but everybody does,
Yeah.
And I wish her the best.
Let me ask you this, Dillon. Do you think other agents try to go out of their way to make other agents look bad, thinking they can knock them out of the box and try to get into their spot? Do you think that's what's going on?
Every single day.
Absolutely.
Well, elaborate, dude. This is your forum. Talk about it.
Every single day, people go and say stuff about different agents and different people. We live in a world nowadays where controversy creates cash, like Eric Bischoff said. So the more controversial people can get on other people, the better. Sometimes you have to call somebody out, So,
well,
I'll say this about the rumor about Lana. She is very active on social media, right? Had I done anything, why didn't she say anything? Don't you find that interesting?
That's a great point.
Oh, here's the strange question, and please don't take offense to it, but it's a good question. Did this benefit your business or hurt it with Lana? Because I would figure you just said controversy creates cash. Did this create cash for you?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Mikey skating. I'm kidding.
Listen, I appreciate this is not easy questions we're hitting Dillon with, right?
No,
and
he's got the
you know,
shades on and everything.
And again, I want to make sure that he understands these are just questions that people want to hear because he's a big time player in the industry. He's a huge player in the industry.
Not for nothing, Dillon's kind of mysterious, so it's pretty cool to have him on. He's got a little bit of that mysterious factor.
Here's the problem, Jimmy. Dillon has a lot of problems with agents, and I'm trying to give him the forum to like speak out about. He doesn't have to call anybody out, but what needs to change in the industry, Dillon, that you feel that it has to become a better place?
Professionalism. I think it's wrong when people go out and they, like this past week, I can't tell you how many times I saw photos of Sid available for sale, even including the day he died, the day he took his final breath.
Right.
People out there making money. I don't think, I don't agree with that. I don't think it's a good business tactic to,
Let me ask you this.
You're not going to get rich off of it.
That's very
all
fair.
You're doing is chasing a hearse and looking unprofessional.
I've seen that done all across the board in memorabilia, Mike. I have.
But here's my question to it. Let's be fair.
Good point.
Okay. Yeah. I agree with Dillon, right? There should be a definite lapse of time.
Morally, I don't think there's an
that's the problem with this whole thing. People don't have morals, and that's the thing.
Yeah, right? Morally, there's no argument here. No.
On the other side, I would say to you, Dillon, right? You're a agent, and part of your deal is getting photographs so you could sell them, right? Because that's part of your investment.
Sure.
At what point is it okay? Go ahead.
I'll say this. I'm not just an agent. You also must remember that I'm also someone who was born in this business, who has a father that had a legendary career. Correct?
Right.
Personally, if someone was selling photos of my father after my father died, I'll say this. We talked about Eric Sims earlier. He and I had a huge beef about 2 years ago when Bobby Eaton died. Issue was Bobby Eaton, his wife Donna, and that entire family, Bill Dundee and them, not Jamie, but Bill, and Donna and Bobby were always very close to my family. Eric was sitting on live one night. I'd bought a couple items that night off of him. I've bought other items since then. But it aggravated me that night, and it truly upset me that he was sitting there and saying, you can't get this autograph anymore. There's a better way to go about it. He was sitting there saying, you can't get this autograph anymore. When I heard that, that's not what I heard, though. You know what I heard? I heard, you can't talk to Bobby anymore. You can't see Bobby ever again. They're gone. It was like a slap in the face. Which I've told him that since then, and I've told other vendors.
I can see that.
You do that stuff when my father dies, I'm not going to be in a good place when my father dies. I'm not probably come after you. Because we're all going to be in the same place because I'm not going away from this business. That's the thing about it. Remember, it might be times I hang my head and stuff and say, you know what, I'm going to get out of it. But in all honesty, I am this business, and this business.
So are you saying your next 20 posts when you say you're done with the business, we just don't count it anymore? It's over. It's like that doesn't matter. It's just
Dillon,
bullshit.
You gotta stop doing that, bro. Because you just gave one of the greatest answers I've ever heard. You know what? I want you to watch this on replay and listen to that last minute or so before we start cracking jokes at you. Because seriously,
before we get into the great Sid Vicious
record so far.
Before we get into the great Sid Vicious, because that's why Dillon's really on here, because Dillon was pretty much the last guy that worked with Sid, and we'd like to talk about that a little bit. Yeah. Dillon, you okay for one more tough question? Because you know where this one's going, right? So I'm asking you if I should ask it or not.
You ask whatever you feel you need to ask.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Again, I don't want any nasty phone calls. This is a respectful interview, right? So I have a lot of respect for you, Dillon.
Oh, God, right, Dillon. Live TV.
The next rumor, not only is it bad enough that agents are ripping each other's heads off to try to get the last final buck, there's a rumor out there that some agents are actually taking other agents' wives. What is that story about?
Wow.
What?
I don't know. That's a real interesting rumor. I'm a virgin. I've never had sex in my entire life.
Oh my God, we got Madonna here. Oh, for God's sakes, like a virgin.
I'm a virgin. I've
Hey,
never had
listen,
sex in my entire life.
That's great.
All right, so you know nothing about that. All right, good enough. Listen, take a stab in the dark. What can you do?
Where did you get that article from?
Yeah, I'd like to hear what the rumor
Monthly?
is. Actually, can you go in depth?
Let me tell you something. I know everything about all these guys all the time. Between wrestlers calling me and agents calling me, and it's again, this is life, and it's kind of funny in a lot of ways, and it's kind of like it's. Anyway, let's get to the important part. So,
well, can you hold on before we go to that? Let's get more in depth in this. Who's the agent? And who's the other agent? I don't know.
Oh, when you asking me who's the? All right, so
yeah.
So you're asking. So one of the agents. All right. So am I supposed to? Do you want me to answer this?
Clapton slept with George's wife.
So I originally heard it was one agent with somebody's wife. But that ended up being a false rumor, and then it became another agent, and I don't know if it's a false rumor. That's why I'm asking the question.
I know nothing.
Who's the other agent?
I still know nothing.
Who's the other agent that has the wife's agent or the other agent having sex?
Who's the other agent having sex, and who's the other agent that's?
Well, one guy usually has a promotion in the Carolinas almost every year. I think Jimmy, you might have been at it.
Oh, that's very as the stomach churns of you. That's great.
Listen, I'm just asking.
That's wonderful to know. You know,
are you talking about WrestleCade?
No, we're talking about The Gathering, right, Mike?
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
I think so.
That's great. I had no idea that there was a soap opera going on around me at the bar. I just saw a lot of drunk people.
Dude, there's soap operas all over this shit. Are you fucking kidding me?
Who was the agent that was involved?
Let's drop it because this could get stupid ugly, and I don't feel like getting messages. It was you know what, Jimmy, you should have stopped me from asking this question. It was a big mistake.
I didn't even know you were going to ask the question. What do you mean I should have stopped?
I should have stopped at the Lana question. I just said, let's get to Sid, man. On a serious.
I'd like to hear this. So you're talking. Hold on. So you're talking about the person who runs the gatherings' wife. So. Martin D'Amato's wife.
No, I don't. I have no idea what he's talking about.
Is that what you're talking about, Mike? Or is the
Martin D'Amato's somebody else?
Those were other kids, Mike.
I don't know. You know what? It's rumors. I don't really want to go off. You know what? It's a mistake even bringing it. It's a rumor. You know what? I don't know what's true or not. I have no idea. I don't know. You know what? I'm going to back off. Listen, I'm backing off this one. I'm backing off this one because it's purely a rumor.
Okay.
Dylan, on a serious note.
That seems like an interesting rumor.
Yeah, to you agents.
You're just gonna he's just gonna keep going.
Agents,
he's like a pit bull. He ain't let his one
go.
It's not that interesting to me. I'm more interested in Iron Maiden's next new album. I don't care about
you're talking to a fat host of a podcast. He knows nothing. What do I know? I know nothing.
Oh, you?
Listen, let's talk.
On you?
Yeah, me.
Me. What's going on here? You're not fat.
This guy's talking about gangbangs. Gangbangs. Oh my God.
This is awful.
All right, listen. Serious note, Dylan. You with Sid. How was Sid when you were last with him? Did he seem okay? Was it a shock that he passed? What's that?
The camera cut off and on for a second, so I didn't hear anything y'all said in the last second.
You promoted Sid, I believe, last, and he looked really healthy. Were you surprised of his passing?
So I was with him the weekend of July the 13th. Actually, there's some controversy around that. Doug Gilbert is who I booked him through, right? So before we get into all of it, let's start to that event, all right? If that's cool with y'all.
Yeah.
So I booked it through Doug Gilbert, and Doug Gilbert abandoned the ship because Sid was upset about the hotel. I booked him at a Marriott property. Well, what he wanted, and I'd never had clarification from Doug about this, he wanted a Marriott. So he wanted a Marriott at LaGuardia Airport. I booked him a Marriott hotel property, which was, I think it was a Fairfield by Marriott or whatever, at the, whatchamacallit, the LaGuardia Airport Hotel. Or not hotel, but the LaGuardia Airport. So when I did that, I figured everything would be cool. ends up there's an issue between Doug and Sid. I look and try to get a hold of Doug the next morning and say, hey, what time y'all want to leave? Y'all want to get breakfast? Y'all want to have like lunch before we go out and do the signing? Because the signing was supposed to be from 1 to 4 p.m. I look at my American Airlines app after not being able to get a hold of Doug, and I did not have Sid Vicious's phone number. So, and I haven't spoken to Doug. Me and Sid both talked about it up until the last time he and I spoke. We never heard from Doug about why there was a reason he left or, jumped ship, or how come he never told anybody he was leaving. So I looked at the app. It said that he left and he was in Charlotte. I called the lobby because it never updated Sid's flight. So I called the lobby and I said, can you get me to Sid Vicious's room? He answered the phone. He said, I'd like you to come to my room so you and I could talk, right? Now, Sid, he's about 6'7", 6'8", big old guy, He still looked like he did back in the day. He shed some pounds and stuff, but he still looked like a tough customer, Like if you ran into him in a dark alley, you wouldn't have wanted to fight him. How I am, though, if there's going to be an issue, I'm going to face it head on. I'm not like some of these agents where, there's an issue, so let's jump town and jump ship and run out the door, So, on that day, on July the 13th, I got to meet Sid Eudy. I went to his room, and he said, Dillon, I'm going to tell you. He said, I got a lot of respect for you. He said, most people wouldn't have came to my room to have a conversation with me about what's going on. He said, most people would have ran off. He said, but you came to my room. I got a lot of respect for you. We went and did the signing. Everything went great. He had a great time. And then we went and had a steak dinner and stuff, which he had at the steak dinner. He had port wine with ice. I've never seen that before. That's one of my memories I'll have of Sid whenever, at a restaurant. Maybe one day I'll have to have a glass of port wine with some ice. But really good guy. I'm living up north in the northern areas nowadays, like Ohio and stuff. So he was a Southern boy and I was a Southern boy. So we kind of connected on that. He and I talked every day. But one of the things we always joked about was tomato sandwiches. Down in North Carolina, we got a delicacy. And I know you're living down south now, I believe, Pharaoh. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You're going to have to one day try a tomato sandwich with Duke's mayonnaise. It's like a Southern delicacy, and it is the best.
Kill me, Mike.
Sometimes it's better than a steak dinner. Sometimes, honestly, I would take that over a steak dinner.
No. I've had small samplings. Like for example, Karen brought me something. She goes, "Here, have some chicken." Started eating it, and I'm like, "All right, what did you just give me?" "Oh, those are gator bites. They're delicious." I'm like, I'm eating a fucking alligator. So I don't think that I'm going to be going after your recommendation with mayonnaise, no less. Somebody told me to put mayo on a hot dog the other day. Where am I, Mike?
Jimmy, Gator's good, bro.
You know what?
Gator's good.
To be fair, it wasn't that bad, but it's the whole idea that I'm eating alligator. You know how this works with the brain. If the brain tells you, one thing, the stomach is going to probably react the same way as the brain. I'm like, I'm eating a fucking gator. What am I doing? What's next?
Dillon, where does Sid Vicious rank in all-time greatest wrestlers?
You mean with character, or you mean with in the ring?
When I speak about wrestlers, I just mean overall, right? It doesn't Matt skills, my skills, whatever. It's the overall wrestler,
talking about,
right?
Character, like I'm talking about personally, or are you talking about
as a wrestler? Forget about it, the man.
As a wrestler, he was WWF champion and he was the WCW champion at one point. He was world champion in both territories. So you got to give him his due.
Jimmy, what do you think? Where does Sid rank?
I think Karen just wrote me, I eat tomato sandwiches with exactly what he just said, same brand and everything. That's what I think. This is ridiculous.
Really?
I'm getting comments about Duke's mayo while I'm trying to do the show. But yeah, she likes that too. She eats it every day, Dillon. Thanks a lot. You
got to try one, Pharaoh.
Oh, Jesus, Mike, help me out here. We're trying to talk about Sid. This is terrible. Sid, where does Sid rank? Well, you know what? Dillon would probably be able to answer this maybe a little easier, maybe not. Sid should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago. It's pretty obvious that Vince didn't care for him. As a fan watching Sid, I said it earlier, Sid was the most believable monster that could do what he did at the size that he did. I think he was listed at 6'7", 317 pounds or something, and he looked every bit of it. He was scary as fuck. He really was. He was so convincing. And you know how he really passed the test? One of his highlights of his career is from Yes, Mike, a little tiny company called ECW, the little train that could back in the day. And let me tell you, when Sid came out in ECW, holy shit, every last bit of the monster that he always sold on WWF had been enhanced by like 10. And he came out and obliterated everybody. And yes, it was that small little arena over in Pennsylvania, but man, was that magic. Sid was always great. I cringed and watched live as Sid's leg exploded coming off the top rope, a move he knew he shouldn't do, but he did anyway.
Do you have a picture of that world famous grin of Sid's?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a picture of the world famous Sid Vicious grin? You know that grin I'm talking about that he always had, you know.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Dylan, if I was in studio, I'd be able to pull that. If I was in studio, I'd be able to pull that up in 2 seconds. But now that I'm working from the man cave because fucking pissed in my studio right now,
Well,
I had to redo it.
Everybody knows about the world famous Sid Vicious.
Oh yeah.
Grin. That smile he had.
Yep. He was great.
The other day, Bill Apter called me, right? And he said, "Is this true?" I said, "Yeah, I heard it from his son Gunner contacted me, right?" He said, "Are you sure this is Sid?" He wanted to get all the facts. He said, "Are you sure this is Sid's son?" I said, "Well, yeah," because I looked at his picture and he had the same grin. Even the grand youngins had that same, you know, that was just his smile, you know.
Right. Right.
As menacing as it looked, that was, you know, the Eudy smile, I guess.
Dylan, you've been an agent for tons of wrestlers. You've seen many of them pass away. How did this particular passing affect you personally?
It really hit me. Like, I don't know if y'all saw my post, but when I posted the WWE thing, I said, I put the heartbroke emoji on there, and I put like a crying emoji on there because that's really how I was on that day that I found out he died. I was heartbroken and I cried about it. Because he and I, after we worked on that July 13th date, every day up until about a week before he passed, he and I spoke on the phone. He and his son and I got to know each other through Messenger because I couldn't get a hold of Sid because Sid's health really went down. I didn't know that the what was your question again? So I can get to your question. Oh, how I feel about with all the. All right.
How did this affect you?
I posted that day that there was Terry Funk, there was Bobby Eaton. I was started thinking about all the guys, right? And I said, Sid, on the message, I said on the post, I said, please let all the guys know I'll never forget them, and I still love them and everything, just like with you, Sid, just like with you, man. That's what I posted on my post, and that was the truth, you know. All these people, and it might just be because who my father is, right? I've gotten to create friendships, and some of these guys have gotten to become like family and stuff, right? Where I see them whether they're working with me or not, you know, I go up to them. Like I see Kevin Nash. He and I are really close, right? That's going to be another tough loss one day. But when I saw him in Cleveland, he said, hey, man, let's grab dinner after this, right? It's not like I'm just some guy that pays him and he's like, okay, here's my payday and stuff, you know. Like with Sid, if he liked you, he liked you. If he didn't, he didn't. There was a select group of people that he spoke to on the phone every day. He called those people every day on the phone, seeing how they were doing, checked in on them and stuff, had a laugh with them. And fortunately, I got to be one of those people that he would call every day and check in on. And, you know, we'd talk about the family and stuff. The people who talk bad about Sid because of, we all know we had the history and nose showing and everything, you know. They didn't get to know Sid Eudy. Sid Eudy was a family man. He was a great man. He was a great friend. He was a friend that anybody in the world would want to have, you know. Yeah, it was a tough loss. You know, I sat there.
Well,
Kevin Sullivan was a tough loss. The day that we lost Kevin, I didn't get out of bed that day. Didn't do anything that day. I just sat there and I said, man, Kev, you know. Like Jerry Jarrett, I got to be close with Jerry Jarrett. I never got to work with him personally, but he would be like a mentor. You know, I would get to call him sometimes and ask him his thoughts on wrestling events and wrestling stuff. I got a voicemail from like Kevin Sullivan, you know, that I listened to that day, where he was saying because the building that we were running in at that time had was being closed down, they were demolishing it to rebuild another building at that fairgrounds in Ohio. And he said, "So what are you going to do next, man?" He said, "I'm proud of you." He said, "Y'all had one hell of a house. Y'all did one hell of an event, you know." So what's next, you know? And when I listen to that, and if I played it for y'all, y'all would say, yeah, this guy's genuine, you know. Where some of these agents, like Eric Sims, and I hate to dog him, you know, when we're talking about this topic, but he's an example. He doesn't make that personal connection with these guys, you know. He doesn't sit there, you know, like and it might just be because he's from that New Jersey, New York market where people are different in the New York, New Jersey area than they are in like the Carolinas, you know. The Carolinas, you know, you get to know somebody, you know them for life. You know, you become friends with them, you call them from time to time, you text them from time to time, check in on them, make sure life is going well for them and everything, you know. I'm fortunate to be able to say that with a lot of these talents like Terry Funk, I would call him from time to time and make sure Terry was doing all right. And I guess it was just my upbringing. In my childhood, I lost a lot of people. Like my grandparents, all my grandparents passed away before I was 16 years old. So with these people, the wrestling people, they became like uncles, and like Bobby Eaton's wife became like an aunt, you know. And losing these people, it hits me in a different way. It hits me personally. And the other thing is, I was telling somebody that when I lose, like when these people die and stuff, right? Like Sid was the same age as my dad. And we all know my dad's had his fair share of health issues. When that happens and we lose these guys, I sit there and say, because you know it always comes in threes now. I always have the fear, is my dad next, you know? And it hits me, you know, where, you know, you're not supposed to worry about death and stuff. You're supposed to live in the moment. But also, you know, my father's had cancer. A couple of weeks ago, he had a surgery where they were supposed to have repaired his throat and stuff. And during that surgery, he had some heart complications, you know. Sid and my dad and these others, I'll be honest with you, and I talk to my dad about this all the time. They were both 63, going to be 64 in the next couple months. Dad's going to be 64 in October, and Sid was supposed to turn 64 in October. With these guys, especially that generation, they're 64 in earthly years. But if we look at it, most of these guys, unfortunately, didn't live past 50. You know, most of the guys that they team with and stuff, or they wrestled against and stuff, that generation of guys, so technically, how I see it, they're 80 years old.
Yep, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Like,
agree.
look at all, like, somebody was talking to me about World Class the other day. I was talking about World Class to somebody. They talk about a Von Erich curse, but like my dad always says, it wasn't a Von Erich curse, it was a World Class curse. Because look at all the guys, you know, Hernandez, Chris Adams.
Yeah, there's plenty more.
Terry Gordy,
that's true.
so on and so forth.
That's true. You know,
A lot of those 80s guys are gone nowadays. You know,
Dillon,
young.
being from a wrestling family, and you bring up the Von Erichs, you know, and please forgive me, but I am curious. Do you put pressure on yourself being the son of a famous wrestler? Is there a pressure that comes with that, or an expectation you place on yourself to carry yourself a certain way? After all, your father is who he is. Is there more pressure?
I'll say this. A couple years ago, I made a post on Facebook. And all these people say, oh, it's easy for, like, for example, Tessa Blanchard at that time was getting to be big in TNA, you know. Charlotte Flair's getting big in WWE, and there's others. They say that they get it easy and stuff, you know. Truth be told, it's not easy. None of it's easy because you have more eyes looking at you. Like when Randy Orton was starting out in OVW, he had more eyes on him than, for example, John Cena, because John Cena, you know, was just starting out. He was practically a nobody. He was a prototype, you know. Right. Randy Orton, though, was the son of Bob Orton Jr., the nephew of Barry Orton, and the grandson of Bob Orton Sr. So if you look at it in that form and fashion, yeah, you have a lot more pressure. Truth be told, had I not be who I was, that conversation between my father and I would have never mattered, and they would have never posted that. You know, like we were talking about earlier, that conversation where he and I got into a heated debate, heated argument. Thing about the wrestling is that it's a lot of ego-driven stuff. There's a lot of people with it. Everybody's got an ego in wrestling. You want to be the best. You want to put yourself on that pinnacle.
Right.
It's a cutthroat business. And also,
It is.
the other thing is, I've always heard that I think it was Paul Bosch told Bruiser Brody years ago, back when he was working for Paul Bosch, something happened between the two of them. And Paul Bosch ended up telling Brody, where money lies, honor dies, Because that's how this business is, though. It's not just with Brody, It's with all of them. Abdullah, he's the guy that my dad still talks to. But after so many situations, we don't want to do business anymore. It's better just, to remain friends,
right,
but not do business. Because, situations like that.
Well, I got to say, Dillon, that you represented yourself.
Because my father and I run that big time wrestling together in Ohio. He's my father and I'm his son. But unfortunately, we're also business partners. We're best friends. We're father and son, but we're also business partners. That's what some people fail to realize. So, I'm sure that at some point, you and Pharaoh and Monty have had an argument that, may not have been in front of the camera or whatever, but I'm sure y'all have had a heated discussion where one was upset about something, and stuff, and y'all talked it out, May have not been in the nicest way of talking it out, but y'all, I'm sure, talked it out. That's why we're here tonight, and y'all are still Monty and the Pharaoh,
Jimmy and I don't fight, man. We love each other, no matter what the scenarios. Listen, Dillon, we're out of time. I wanted to say thank you for coming on. You really represented yourself well. I really appreciate you answering the questions and being fully honest. Before I ask you, I'm going to ask you, Dillon, to send us out with final words to Sid. But before I go, I wanted to say one thing. I wanted to thank Big Vito for being a man and calling me and wanting to just discuss it, just discuss whatever we discussed. And, Jimmy, credit to you. You met the man. You said he was a good guy. And, again, I want to make this also very clear that Sims is a good business partner of the show, and he is a good man. He's not a bad man. I don't think anyone's a bad – I hope everybody's not a bad person. So. Dillon, we like you on this show too. You're a good guy, even though sometimes you call me up and curse me out, and then you got to kind of drag it all back. Yeah, every so often he'll curse me out.
I'll say this.
He's very reactive. Very reactive.
I get it from my Grandpa Hines. My Grandpa Hines was the type of guy where if I'm going to have an issue with somebody, I'd like to talk to them personally. So, the situation that happened where y'all had a guest on your show who said some things that were completely false about my father, I had an issue with that. My father's almost died.
And you know what? But you see, here was the difference, and I got to be fair here. You called me cursing me out. Your father called me and said, "Hey, man, I really would appreciate if you take it down. This wasn't true." And I'm like, fair enough, sir. Yeah. Not a problem. If you would address me like that, I would have said, "Yeah, Dillon, you're right. I'll take it down." You know what I'm saying? Right. We handle things like gentlemen, right? We're not here to embarrass anybody here, but we're also here on this show. This show stands for giving the people the right to say what they believe, whether the truth is what their belief is truth or not.
Can I ask you a question,
is irrelevant.
I'm gonna ask you a question. Do you believe that girl was with every single guy that she said she was with?
Which girl?
She's talking about Angel Amoroso. Oh, you asking me personally? I'll answer the question. I think she's batshit crazy. How's that? There's my answer.
That's my answer too. That's my
answer too.
I don't believe she could have been with every single 100 guys.
But I will say this: if there was any point that a young 15-year-old was taken advantage by people, those people should pay for that. Okay, I'm never gonna say someone's lying, Dillon, because I don't know. I'm not
We
there.
don't
I only
know.
know that I only know
We
my
don't
truth.
know. But as
Okay,
Like I'll say,
interviewers,
there are some shit people in this business. Like I believe it's Rock and Roll Buck Zumhoff who ended up.
oh
He's
yeah,
in prison nowadays.
Oh,
who
yeah.
did something to his daughter. You know, there's
Yeah,
pieces of shits in this business.
there's
But-
some definite obvious ones. He's one of them.
But back to the point, you asked me, did I believe her? I'll tell you what. On a lot of her stories, it seemed very clean. Like there wasn't any stuttering. It was like it was being recalled. But do I think that there's certainly not there's not enough bats in the belfry, right, Jimmy? Is that the best way to say it?
And there's this again, and I get back to this again. It's our job to interview people. If they want to talk about what they want to talk about, it's what they want to talk about. And if someone has a problem, our door is open, and you can talk about what bothered you that they said. That's our job.
Right. That's our job.
It's part of our job. We don't look for it or ask for it. If it comes, though, it comes.
But the one thing we won't do, Dillon, we won't prod and go along like white black man. What's his name?
Stop! I don't even know what
Right?
you're talking about.
Where he's like,
Right.
well, Eric Sims is just this and that. No, I'm not lending my opinion. My opinion about you, Eric Sims, Sid Justice, whatever, that lies within me. But when we're on this air right now, this second, we are totally neutral all the time.
Right.
And if we have an opinion, we have an opinion.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of people. Good.
Here's an opinion, and it's my opinion. I know Eric. I know Vito. I know Eric for a very long time. I know Vito for a short time. I wish that neither of them got into any kind of argument at all. How about that? That's my opinion.
Agreed. Right. And maybe it mellows out. And you know what? I only wish the best. I only wish the best for Dillon's father. He's a great guy. I only wish the best for Dillon. I would just love to see Dillon take the high road, calm down, take a breath, have a discussion, and then say, okay, we settle our discussion.
Yeah.
It is wrestling.
Yeah.
It is wrestling. There is some stuff that goes along. But Dillon, I've always liked you. Jimmy has always liked you. You're a good guy. You're a really good promoter. You treat the wrestlers well. But you know what? It's, we to each their own, and we all have our own lives to live. But anyway, with that, Dillon, please send us off with one message to Sid, if you had a chance to say goodbye to him, and then we'll go off the air because we do have the Glamour Girls on in about, 1 minute.
All right. So what I'd be able to say to Sid was thank you for the friendship. Thank you for being who you were. I hope that his family out there realizes that he loved them, if there was any doubt about it, I hope they realize that he did love them, because every time we spoke, he always talked about how much he loved his grandkids and how much he loved his kids and how much he loved his wife. He was the friend that anybody in this world would want to have. And honestly, I'm going to miss him, just like I miss the others. And I hope that one day when I get there, we're all reunited again and we're all hanging out, Yeah.
Well, personally, when I get to heaven, man, I don't want to be hanging out with a bunch of wrestlers. But with that, Dillon, great job. We'll see you along the way. Jimmy, send us out.
You've been watching Monty and the Pharaoh. And until, what'd you say, a minute? It's now like 10 seconds. The Glamour Girls. See you in a second later.